Following the Deputy President, David Mabuza, on his walkabout at the Biovac Institute where the vaccines are being kept. As you can see, it's a very cold room there. Hence, they've all been given those jackets where these vaccines are being stored that are being rolled out currently, in fact, in the country. Let's take a listen to what's happening there.
You're doing the interview. Can we just line up here, please? Newsroom Africa, where are you? Here you are. SABC, Samkele. Where you are? GCIS? Sure. Where are you? Stone. Where is Stone? We're freezing here. Stone.
No.
What? How are you?
I'm alright. Are you? We're not taking questions, so the GP is just addressing on what he. Yes.
Well, we visited the facility. We are partly owning this facility as government. We have got shares here. Now, this facility is just a storage facility. The manufacturing site of Biovac, it's in Cape Town. So the J&J vaccine that we are administering now, we store it here. And then from here we distribute it to the different centers, in the main to the vaccination sites. Well, what we have learned today is that the cold chain can be broken for some days. That won't alter the quality of the vaccine, but it cannot go beyond certain days. So this is the capability that we have as a country, which Cabinet took a decision to sort of improve this capability of us manufacturing our own vaccines. We do currently manufacture vaccines, almost 80%. We manufacture in Cape Town, then we distribute, but we want to increase this capacity so that as a country we can have that capability. So that's it. We're ready. We are not going to need another storage facility. Everything that will come will be stored here. Then from here, right to the vaccination site. Thank you very much.
Have you been vaccinated, Deputy President?
Thank you.
I will be vaccinated. I'll visit a site where they are vaccinating. I'll be vaccinated there.
Yeah. When it comes to the issues of corruption, how can you ensure South Africans that there won't be any corruption when it comes to vaccinations?
Samkele will take the...
It is our...
We are here for
No. In terms of our process, the IMC that we are chairing, we are taking care of all the process and ensure that there is no corruption.
Are you still getting the Pfizer vaccine?
But what's your response to the supra criticism that what's happening in South Africa is a clinical trial and not a rollout?
Ladies and gentlemen,
the Deputy President is here to deal with the vaccine and the Biovac facility. You can't be discussing.
Minister will remain to answer.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, DP.
That was the Deputy President, David Mabuza there. His staff alongside the Minister, Acting Minister and the Presidency seem not to be wanting the Deputy President. The Acting Minister in the Presidency, there were some issues that are being raised on the Pfizer vaccine. How has the Interministerial Committee, particularly, and the President and the Minister of Health addressed this specific issue with concerns when it comes to that particular particular vaccine?
What we are currently dealing with is that we are administering the J&J vaccine. And the Pfizer vaccine will have to go through the necessary regulatory authorization in the country through SAPRA. And therefore, we cannot talk about a vaccine that we are not yet administering as a country. You are aware that we don't vaccinate until the full authorization is done by SAPRA. So there's nothing to be worried about. The relevant authorities, the Department of Health, the SAPRA will attend to that matter and then give the briefing to the IMC. And in terms of the issue raised previously around what are we dealing with corruption, we've got a work stream that deals with anti-corruption and risk management, all the risks that can arise and permeate under the circumstances that IMC that work stream is working on that. They will have a media briefing, I think, next week to make sure that you get updated on what are the plans to prevent, because what we are focusing now on is to control and prevent before then dealing with it in responding or reactive. So we are being proactive this time around. So those are the things that we're working on in the IMC.
Minister, what's your response as the government to the criticism by SAPRA, the regulator, that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is merely part of a clinical trial and not a vaccine rollout as announced by the government?
But the government has never claimed that it is a full rollout. We have said it's an expanded trial study that is being done. That's why it's health workers who are participating in that study. And until all the papers have been filed, you are aware that the US has just given an emergency okay for its full rollout, and also the papers have been submitted in this country. And South Africa and the FDA, SAPRA and the FDA, have agreements to make sure that whatever is approved in the US can be used here to fast track that process. So there's no worry about that. There was never claimed that we are doing a full rollout. We're clear that we are doing an expanded trial.
You think that criticism is unfair?
Minister, can you please stand up straight? Yes.
I do not know why there should have been a criticism, because we're on the same wavelength with SAPRA. Because remember, SAPRA is also a regulatory authority of government. So I don't know why there should be a criticism. There was no need for such, because there was never that claim.
When it comes to the issues of pharmaceutical companies saying that they should be allowed to procure the vaccines and distribute them on their own, as opposed to South Africans only relying on government, what is the Interministerial Committee and Cabinet saying on the specific issue of these particular vaccines? Can the Deputy Minister of Health also come in on the specific issue?
I don't know whether you want me to start. If I have to start, I don't know what are we talking about, because in terms of the procurement that we're working on, given the waivers, and the Minister of Health and the President have explained this, that given the waivers that have to be done for the vaccines to be rolled out and administered, because remember the pace at which the vaccines were developed, I don't think there is a company in the country that can give that waiver about the lives of South Africans. It's only the government of South Africa that stands surety of the lives of South Africans, because they're the only ones with that authority. But we are working with all pharmaceutical companies. I think the arrangement is that it's government, it's pharmaceuticals, it's private health, it's also some private companies, like large employers like mining companies, who are part of the procurement. We have agreed that the single source of procurement is government, and then they all get from this very point to their various centers and administer. But the Deputy Minister can explain further.
No, that's correct, Minister. We haven't prohibited anybody, but it's the actual manufacturers. Whether you talk to Pfizer, whether it's J&J, they themselves want to deal with governments because they feel much more secure in terms of their interest, in terms of securing, the public who are going to receive the vaccines, in terms of their own guarantee. In fact, I don't know why this matter arises, because whether you go to UK, it's the UK government which buys from AstraZeneca, from Pfizer. We go to the US government. Everywhere is the government, because that's what the manufacturers actually prefer. So it's not as if we, as a government, we wave the big stick and say, thou shalt not do this and that. But it's just that the manufacturers themselves are comfortable with that kind of arrangement.
Minister, regarding the public-private partnership which this facility is involved in with the government, the Deputy President said that the government owns some shares in this company. Could you just explain how that works and what the breakup is? And then the people here have said that the vaccine, when it arrives in the country, is transported to this facility, and then the integrity of the trucks that are transporting it is checked by their members, and then after a day it's transported to Bloemfontein and then across the the country. Do you know if the transportation of the vaccine between the airport and the facility and the testing facility in Bloemfontein is done by government couriers, or are there outside people who have been hired to do that? Let's just start with the public-private partnership between Biovac and the government. Thank you.
Okay, just to describe, Biovac has been in existence since 2003. The partnership with government has been there from day one. So it's not a new partnership, it's been there for the past 17 or going on now onto 18 years. We've been supplying pediatric vaccines largely since 2003, and as and when government has adapted the immunization schedule to introduce new vaccines, we've equally adapted to that, some of which we are manufacturing in Cape Town. In terms of your question related to the transportation of vaccines, the whole system is governed under what regulatory authorities would expect of anybody that would transport the vaccine, right from the source, being the overseas source, through the transportation when it lands at OR Tambo, to be transported even up to our facilities. So we have to make sure that there is full integrity of the product, whether it's in a truck or whether it's in a warehouse. So that whole value chain has to be maintained, and that is what our license requires. Whether there are subcontractors that are used or whether we use our own trucks, the whole system has to have integrity, and ultimately the likes of Biovac then takes ownership.
If I could rephrase the question then perhaps, Minister, did the government tender for any courier companies to transport the vaccine from the airport to this facility and then to the other facilities and around the country?
The logistics of getting storing and distributing the vaccines in the country to date is left to Biovac. So we are using the Biovac processes that have always been in place. If it's their contracts, it's their contracts that have always been in place. So we are currently in the hands of Biovac fully.
Okay, thank you so much. That
was the briefing from the various personnel. The Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Pasha, and the Acting Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, and also earlier on the Deputy President saying that he would be visiting vaccine facilities once government effectively rolls out the vaccine a program in the country, but at this point in time they're just going through clinical trials of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Back to you, Flo.
All right, thank you very much. There's Samkele for us in Midrand there at the Biovac Institute. We, of course, heard from the acting minister in the presidency. You've, of course, been in the position since the untimely passing of the late Minister Jackson Mthembu. So that was Khumbudzo Ntshavheni there speaking to reporters outside there as the deputy minister had to be rushed elsewhere. Of course, he spoke about the manufacturing of our own vaccines and wanting to increase on this capacity so that we can indeed make sure that all South Africans, or most South Africans, do indeed get vaccinated. Also saying that from this point we won't need to find another storage facility. All right, let's move on to other